And welcome to your Political Pulse. We are joined by South Dakota's lone U.S. Congressman Dusty Johnson. And Congressman, we appreciate you for coming on the show today.
Anytime.
You were here last time the government almost headed to a shutdown, which ultimately it did. It was the longest shutdown in history. We'll just recap that. What did you make of that shutdown last year? This all hinged on a health care deal.
Well, I said it on the front end of the shutdown. I said it in the middle of the shutdown, and I said it at the end of the shutdown. Shutdowns are always stupid. It doesn't matter whether the Republicans caused them or Democrats caused them. They don't make America stronger. They cost us a lot of money. And I think they put a lot of pressure on the American people. We take the American economy hostage when we do this. It is never a good idea.
The latest reporting we're getting right now is that the Senate is ultimately securing a deal right now to avoid a government shutdown. They're going to take DHS funding, separate this, put a 2-week continuing resolution on that, and send 5 appropriations bills through. So the DHS funding will be the only lingering funding. But this has to go back to your chamber ultimately to pass. Do you see it passing in the House?
Yeah, it needs to pass in the House. Listen, there are folks upset on the left and on the right. The reality is that we do need to get this done. And taken collectively, these appropriations packages spend less money this year than we spent last year. It is a remarkable movement toward fiscal responsibility in a town that sure as heck needs it. That's why I worked so hard with President Trump to get these things passed out of the House in the first place. They got to come back to the House so we can kind of clean up the mess in the Senate, but we will get it done on Monday or Tuesday.
Okay, so obviously Democrats right now, their big hang-up is Department of Homeland Security funding. They are trying to get changes, effect changes to immigration enforcement operations. Do you think they're going to make any headway on this? Do you see a deal coming together on this?
I mean, there are some of the things they want that are easier to build bipartisan consensus around. They want body cameras on every ICE agent. Well, listen, body cameras have been a huge benefit to law enforcement agents, to the accused, and to the general public. Like, this gives us better information when we're trying to make decisions. That might be an easier deal to reach than maybe some of the concessions.
So right now when you look at immigration enforcement operations, what is your take on them? Do you think these are being carried out the right way, or are there places where you see there could be some improvements made?
Part of the problem is we're dealing with people don't even have the same set of facts. If you're on the left center of the spectrum, you're getting fed a diet of videos that only shows how absolutely unhinged some of these protesters can be. And some of them can be unhinged. If you're on the right, you're only getting fed a daily diet of videos that show law enforcement agents who don't act within the proper protocols and who make a mistake. And in my mind, there is plenty of cause for the politicians, for the protesters, and for law enforcement agents to de-escalate. Now, I'll tell you, that's what Secretary Noem and President Trump have started to do in the last few days. We are moving in the right direction, and I think that's part of the reason you see that the temperature has considerably dropped in Minneapolis.
Well, we saw the president, he got on the phone with both the governor of Minnesota and the mayor of Minneapolis. He also sent Tom Homan to the city, so you were welcoming, I'm guessing, that exchange and that action.
Well, I would say 2 things. I mean, first off, the deaths of Good and Preddy, they are a tragedy. I'm not in any way trying to decide whether or not the officers acted exactly right at exactly a particular moment. Listen, that's why we have trials. That's why to be indicted, you need to have a grand jury of your peers make that decision. That's why we know to get held guilty, you got to be found guilty by a jury of your peers. We don't let politicians sentence you to prison, thank goodness. But let's not forget that we let 8 million people, not me, not you, but the last administration, let 8 million people illegally into this country in the previous 4 years. That has created a serious problem. Overwhelmingly, Americans do not like people getting here illegally, and they want to make sure that we do what we can, particularly to get the violent criminals out of this country.
More than 160 House Democrats have signed off on articles of impeachment against Secretary Kristi Noem. We spoke to you about this in the past. This is after really the first initial announcement was made on those articles of impeachment. Those talks, of course, are ramping up. Do you still plan to defend Kristi Noem in the House of Representatives?
Number one, I don't think they're amping up. I mean, the reality is that we are in such a partisan age that almost all the Democrats in the Senate voted against Kristi Noem to be confirmed the first time. So the fact that I mean, what is that? Not even 3/4 of House Democrats are opposed to her staying in that job, isn't really a big surprise. Those numbers were unchanged from a year ago, in the Senate anyway. She's had an insanely big job. 8 million illegals in this country is a really, really big job. And one thing I know about Kristi Noem is that she is tough. She never claims to be perfect. She understands that when errors are made, either by her or her people, she has a special obligation to figure out what happened and to fix it in the future. And I know that, the House is 435 people. 160 or 170 have signed off on an impeachment resolution. Almost 300 have not. I think that shows you how solid the ground that she's standing on is still pretty firm.
Okay, but I do want to go to this audio, give you a chance to respond to this. This is House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries talking about his plan to ultimately push forward with these articles should President Trump not fire Secretary Noem.
Donald Trump needs to fire Kristi Noem immediately. We know that she is a malignant, corrupt, pathological liar. She's unqualified. She never should have been confirmed by Republicans in the United States Senate. She is creating harm to the American people. Taxpayer dollars are actually being used by the Department of Homeland Security to kill American citizens.
So
and to brutalize
short,
law-abiding immigrant family. That's unacceptable.
Short of him firing, okay, short of him firing her, you support him moving towards impeachment then?
We will commence impeachment proceedings against Kristi Noem in the absence of her being fired.
Congressman, you are South Dakota's lone representative. I just want to give you a chance to respond to what you heard there.
Blake, I think that sound clip proves what I was saying, though, in that's been Hakeem Jeffries' stance all along. He just told all of your viewers that Kristi Noem should never have been confirmed. He was opposed to her then, and he's opposed to her now. And that really is the situation in the House. The Democrats, listen, they were never enthusiastic about Secretary Noem. The Republicans understand there were 8 million illegals in this country. She has done yeoman's work in securing the southern border. Everybody knows that today we have operational control of the southern border in a way we did not under President Biden. Illegal drug crossings down 95% at the southern border. I get it. Hakeem Jeffries didn't like her then, and he doesn't like her now.
I want to give you a chance to talk on something because you've spoken about this a couple of times since we started talking about this, and it sounds like you have a little bit of sympathy towards Secretary Noem in the mission that she's trying to carry out right now.
I've got sympathy for almost everybody in this system. I can't imagine being a law enforcement agent who loves my country and then shows up for a work day where for 12 hours I have people screaming at me. I can't imagine knowing that when I go to work that day that there are people who want to kill me. And there are protesters who are hell-bent on violence. Not many, and certainly not all, but some. That puts people on edge. I can't imagine being a protester who is exercising your First Amendment rights, your constitutional rights, who is concerned about whether or not that you'll be injured as a part of that protest. I can't imagine the duty that the President of the United States, Secretary Noem, and everybody at Customs and Border Patrol and ICE have to do in trying to unwind the terrible errors of the last administration. So yes, you're right. I have empathy for what Kristi Noem has had to go through. I also have a lot of empathy for what the families of Mr. Pretty and Ms. Good have had to go through. There is a lot of work to be done.
Do you believe both of those shootings harbored a full investigation, an independent investigation?
Oh, of course. I mean, any officer involved shooting, regardless of whether it happens at the local, state, or federal level, should always get a fair and thorough investigation. And I believe we're moving in that direction. I know people have been rushing to judgment. I know that we're in an era where the hot takes are the best takes, but that's not my opinion. My opinion is rather than have the politicians decide guilt or innocence, let's get all of the evidence and then let's take a look.
The southern border is something I actually wanted to talk to you about coming in today. You know, I spoke with Senator Mike Rounds, who was recently at the southern border, and to the Trump administration's credit, he said it was quiet down there.
Yeah.
We did also get a report from the DEA saying that fentanyl powder, fentanyl coming over in the powder form is up here in South Dakota with their seizures. I don't know if you saw, we interviewed the assistant special agent in charge. Now, you are on the select committee on China, where these precursor chemicals are coming from. They're getting into Mexico, and then they're ultimately ending up in the country. So I understand that the border's quiet right now. We aren't seeing any illegal, we're not seeing a large number, to say the least, of illegal crossings. But on that fentanyl powder, what do you think needs to be done to stop those precursor chemicals from even making it out of China?
Yeah, and first off, just to talk about the success at the border, we know that that drug overdose deaths in this country, in many parts of the country, are down by half compared to a year ago. That is a remarkable success story and is tied to finally us getting operational control of the southern border. Now, you're right, the bad guys are sneaky. They are innovative. They will find a way to poison American communities. So we also have to be on the cutting edge. And you are right, Blake, in calling out China. We know that 95% of the precursor chemicals used by the drug cartels to poison American citizens comes from China. And so I've been a big pusher of a package we've got that over time is going to hold China accountable through sanctions, through fines, and through other accountability mechanisms for really their inexcusable role in this poisoning of our communities.
Are you finding that these precursor chemicals even make it into China, or are they primarily coming out west?
They come from China. Chinese factories make them. China knows how to stop them, which is why China doesn't have a fentanyl problem. They allow them to be exported through other legitimate ocean liners. Other legitimate businesses will carry this kind of as part of a sideline, which is why my bill, which punishes these otherwise legal operations for their role in this really disgusting illegal trade, is starting to have an effect on this traffic.
Are you hoping that some of the action that President Trump has taken, notably going in and arresting Nicolas Maduro, bringing him in to face the U.S. justice system, sends a message to some of these cartels south of the border who are, yeah, the chemicals are coming from China, but they're putting them together and bringing them into the country?
When I talk to law enforcement officers in South Dakota, so Sheriff Mueller here in Rapid City, he has been honest that they are seeing fewer drugs on the street, in no small part because of the southern border. I've heard that from most every sheriff I've sat down and talked to, and so that is a big win. You're right, I mean, the bad guys are finding a way to get them in, so we need to continue to innovate as well. We're also not going to just arrest our way out of this problem. We do need to play hard with China. We need to play hard at the southern border. We need to play hard at the drug cartels. We also need to make sure that when people have addiction problems, that we give them the supports they need to get clean.
So yesterday was probably an interesting day for you to watch as a U.S. congressman because a part of the big, beautiful bill came right back to South Dakota. Governor Roden signed his first bill. This was 1044, and this allocated about $190 million to the state's rural health system to really bolster the state's rural health system. To my knowledge, a lot of this is one-time spending. So by the end of all this spending, what are you hoping the state accomplishes?
Yeah, our whole delegation, Mike Rounds, John Thune, myself, we worked our tails off to get this money into the package and to keep it into the package. Folks on the other side of the aisle had a lot of misinformation about all of this Medicaid getting cut. Well, what Medicaid's getting cut? I mean, the one big beautiful bill really cut back on abuses that other states, not South Dakota, but that other states were engaged in, particularly California. Our bill.
Oh, come on, Congress was my home state.
I know. Well, they had a scam running whereby they were charging 4 times what South Dakota charges for the same procedure, and they were gobbling up all that federal money. And so what we did is just say, nope, every state's got to play by the same type of rules that South Dakota's been playing by. But we wanted that rural health transformation fund because we knew the way we're doing healthcare in this country right now is not good enough. It is going to lead to our national bankruptcy if we don't get it right. And so we fought. I'm glad to see that the state legislature, in their wisdom, agreed with us. I've got some skepticism about the governor's plan for what these dollars are going to be used for. By and large, it seems like we're going to spend it on things that cost money long term. And the worst thing we could do is 5 years from now, when that money runs out, for us to fall off a cliff and then have to cut all of these new programs that we started. I think it's much better for us to make investments that would actually transform how we deliver healthcare in South Dakota. If 5 years from now, we're doing the same kinds of things that we're doing today, that money will have been a terrible failure.
So a couple things. One, I'm utterly shocked to hear California was overcharging for anything.
Right, yes. Yeah.
But two, so it sounds like you would like to see more of these investment dollars put into infrastructure itself, not so much programming money, because that's kind of what I'm hearing with what you're saying.
Well, we had some restrictions. We didn't want people to just go out and build a bunch of buildings because that also doesn't transform healthcare. I guess what I'm talking about is building a better mousetrap. If the only thing you're going to do is take the existing mousetrap and spray it with gold paint, that doesn't improve health outcomes. And so what I would like to do is see some of those dollars used particularly in the substance abuse arena. We have not yet figured out the best way to get people clean and keep them clean. And I think particularly with meth, there is a lot of research that we can do, a lot of new solutions that over the course of 5 years we could find. South Dakota and the rest of this country has a serious drug problem. Meth is poisoning this state. And I just hope we get to a point where those dollars will be used to getting South Dakota healthy rather than just paying for programs that are going to have to go away.
In the past, I'm sure you've monitored some of these drug prevention programs. Where do you think they're getting it wrong? Or where do you think they've gotten it wrong?
I don't blame the programs. What we know with meth as it is, listen, this is 1,000 times more evil than alcohol. And most of us have had our lives impacted by alcohol. We've had family members who've struggled with addiction. And not every 28-day program works. And yet, many of us know a friend or a family member who has gotten clean after going through treatment. Maybe not the first or second time they went through, but they got clean. The numbers for meth treatment are not as good. They are not as strong. Meth is a newer, more evil drug. We are still finding our way toward discovering that better mousetrap that's going to help us get our arms around it. If that rural transformation money was used to find a better treatment mechanism, that would be something worth investing in long term.
Okay, I want to get into data centers. This is a debate that I can see brewing right now. The interesting thing about this debate is it really hinges on tax exemptions. And I know where you stand. We ran a story with you on this. But really, the interesting thing is I'm seeing two bills right now that are kind of emerging. And they both want to protect electric ratepayers. They want to protect water use in the area. But one says we are going to provide tax exemptions should you prove that you're not going to do undue burden onto electric ratepayers and use too much water. The other is just flat out saying you cannot pass costs onto electric ratepayers. You cannot use too much water. But we're also going to do away with any sort of tax exemptions. And I know you're on the pro-exemption side of this. I want to give you a chance to describe your support for having those exemptions. Because to my knowledge, House Bill, I think it's 1005, this is by Representative Kent Rowe, is directly from your Data Centers Done Right initiative.
Well, we don't need to have exemptions. We do need to be competitive. And the hardest thing about being involved in the political arena is how much people just don't tell the truth. They would have you believe that these are big subsidies, right? Like the government is giving money to these data centers. 100% not true. The taxes in South Dakota to build a building with computers. That's all a data center is. It's a big shed with computers. We charge more taxes here than anywhere else. That's not the South Dakota way. We pride ourselves on being a low tax state. So my Data Centers Done Right initiative just says, all right, these are the taxes they pay in North Dakota, a lot of taxes, tens of millions of dollars of taxes for each data center every year. South Dakota's here. Who in the world would ever build a data center in South Dakota? My Data Centers Done Right just moves us a little closer to the regional average.
But it essentially allows them to have tax exemptions on the equipment inside the data center.
But we don't even need to, if all we want to do is change our tax structure so everybody benefits. I mean, having the highest taxes in the region is not conservative. Maybe it doesn't have to be an exemption for a particular type of project. Maybe it's just making sure that our tax structure is fair and competitive, not through an exemption model, but just saying, okay, we won't charge taxes for the computers in anybody's building. We don't treat data centers better. We're just going to treat everybody fairly because that's not a tax North Dakota has. That's not a tax Iowa has. That's not a tax Nebraska has. When South Dakota has taxes that nobody else has, that is a liberal approach, not a conservative approach. Now, I would say this, my Data Centers Done Right, you're exactly right. It does not welcome data centers here unless we can prove that they will not hurt our electric rates.
Now, was 1005 modeled largely off of this? I remember at the time when we spoke, you said that Roe was pushing it through. Is that essentially
it's the same concept. I'll be honest, there's some of the language that I don't like in Kent Rowe's bill. There are a couple of things that the governor pushed for in Kent Rowe's bill that frankly are bad policy and I think move the bill in the wrong direction. Is Kent Rowe's bill better than nothing? It is, but it's not the bill that I would have written.
You know, I'm going to have to ask you what
Yeah.
you don't like in the bill.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that the governor inserted this language about 50 years into the bill, and that's allowed everybody to go around and talk about 50 years worth of tax exemptions for these projects. The reality is the equipment turns over every 3 or 4 years. I think that was a critical miscalculation on the part of the governor. And then number two, the bill makes it seem as though nothing related to blockchain, some of these digital assets, can get that favorable tax treatment. The reality is South Dakota has always become more prosperous when we have been on the cutting edge of how do financial firms like a Citibank, like a Wells Fargo, can they make investments in South Dakota? The governor's bill makes it really hard for financial institutions or anybody who wants to use the blockchain to be able to make those investments in the state. I thought it was a step backward. Now, I would say this. There might not be any state that's done more to welcome data centers in the last 2 years than North Dakota. North Dakota in the last 2 years has seen their electric rates go down more than any other state. When you do data centers right, your taxes go down and your electric rates go down.
I know for you, one of the things you believe is that this could offset property taxes, right? Because they're going to be paying an exorbitant amount of money in property taxes.
Yeah, you know, I mean, math is math. I mean, you don't have to take my word for it. The reality is all of the taxes paid today to county government in Dual County. Applied Digital wants to build a data center near Clear Lake, in essence. That's Dual County. All of the taxes coming to the county today are $11 million. That one data center, under my plan, would pay $5 million a year to the county. $5 million. They could give their property taxpayers almost a 50% property tax reduction if they wanted to. Not every project is a good project to say yes to. There are data centers we should say no to. But people who don't want us to say yes to any of them, they are arguing against Donald Trump's belief that we need to win the AI battle, and they are against my belief that South Dakotans deserve lower taxes.
Let's do a step backwards.
Yeah.
Back to the Select Committee on China, your work on that committee, because the AI battle, we're always talking about the United States against China.
Yeah.
How concerned should we be about this space race, so to speak, you know, to ultimately take on China in the AI space?
We have a more virtuous and freer world because it's America and American allies that won the battle for the Internet 1.0 and the battle for Internet 2.0. It's American values that were the foundation for a lot of that investment and development. If we let China win the AI battle, then all of these tools, we can't put our head in the sand. There are people who say, oh my gosh, AI is going to cause so many problems. That's what they said about the Industrial Revolution. That's what they said about the computer revolution. That's what they said about the Internet revolution. We would never want to go back and wipe those away. Yes, they were disruptors. Yes, some people lost their jobs in the industrial, computer, and internet revolution. And yet, clearly, Blake, we are so much better off today than we were before those revolutions. The same thing is going to be true for AI. Why would we have all of our information flow through China? Why would we have those great jobs and that great investment flow to China? Donald Trump has called for a golden age for America. That we will not realize that unless America, rather than China, wins the AI battle.
President Trump was recently in the Midwest where he spoke about the fact that Senate Majority Leader John Thune and Speaker Mike Johnson were getting closer to a year-round E15 deal. We've got a lot of corn growers here in South Dakota. That's no secret. How big of a deal is that for South Dakota should they secure year-round E15?
It's a big enough deal that last Tuesday night, Speaker Mike Johnson and I and a few other biofuels champions were fighting and having intense fellowship on this topic until 1 o'clock in the morning. And Mike Johnson understands the importance of E15. Listen, this is not a mandate. Nobody should ever be forced to buy E15 if they don't want to. But I would say this, if we want American energy dominance, and we do, that should come from more American fuel. Yes, of course, from the oil fields of North Dakota, Oklahoma, and Texas, but also from the cornfields of South Dakota, Iowa, and Nebraska. Rather than looking toward Saudi Arabia and whether or not they'll let us buy more oil today, why wouldn't we make more of that ourselves? Donald Trump is a big believer in E15, which just allows people to buy E15 rather than 10% ethanol at the pump. We're going to get it done in the next month or two, and that's going to be huge news for American energy.
Well, it's going to be huge news for the South Dakota economy. I mean, I was reading about the demand increase it would have on corn if this goes through.
Yes, it's not going to happen overnight. Again, this doesn't mandate anybody do anything. Is every gas station owner immediately going to go from E10, 10% ethanol, 90% gasoline, to E15? No. I mean, some people don't even sell ethanol, right? That same gas station who only has E0 can still have E0. But slowly over time, more and more Americans are going to choose to buy E15, and more gas station owners are going to choose to sell it. When that happens, that is going to mean that rather than losing out to Brazil, who already is the biggest grower of soybeans and is already, unfortunately, the biggest beef provider in the world, we're going to be able to continue to be the king of corn, buying and selling more of it here in America.
Have you had any messaging to the White House on soybean trade? I look at the latest trade. I've talked to some of the guys in the industry here in South Dakota, and what they've essentially expressed to me is that, you know, the deal the White House secured this year, it's half the normal amount, and the years going forward, it's kind of a baseline amount. They want to see that amount be brought up. Are you messaging that to the White House?
Probably 35% of all of the times I've ever spoken to Donald Trump in our lives have been about trade and tariffs and soybeans and beef. And so, none of this is going to. Now, listen, did I talk to the president about that when he and I were at the Super Bowl together last year? No, I didn't. You know, we talked more about the game.
You didn't bring up soybeans in front of a bunch of chicken wings and nachos and say, hey, let's talk about the good old soybean.
I did not, but I talk to the White House regularly about, hey, here's what, I understand what you're trying to do with the Argentinian beef. Here's why I don't know that was the right approach. I understand what you're trying to do on the tariffs. Here's why I want you to make so that you understand that here's what the impact that it has on the South Dakota economy. And I think that's why you have seen the president. Listen, the president listens. He likes to mix it up. He is nobody's fool. You better be willing to bring the receipts if you're going to push back on him. But if you are willing to take it to him in good faith with real facts, he does listen.
Okay, Postal Service. Congressman, I know you are trying to get Pete Sessions out here, your fellow congressman, to take a look at the situation with the Postal Service out here. I'm sure I said this to Senator Mike Rounds. You two are probably their favorite people right now on the planet. What do you hope Sessions finds out during his trip?
Yeah, the Postal Service is broken. I'm not blaming the clerks or the letter carriers. I'm blaming the leadership. A lot of this pressure we were bringing to bear caused Louis DeJoy, the former Postmaster General, to leave his job. And now we got a new Postmaster General, Steiner, who's on the clock. He's been there 6 months. Mike Brown's done a good job on this. John Thune's done a good job on this too, by the way. But Mike's really led the charge. And when we complain to the Postal Service, Blake, it's amazing. They don't listen to us like every other agency does. When we complain to the VA listens. When we complain to Indian Health Service, they listen. The IRS. The Postal Service, the further we go up the food chain, the less responsive they get. And so, listen, we're going to turn up the heat then. We're going to bring Pete Sessions, the chairman of the House committee that oversees the Postal Service. And when he comes out here, he is going to bring senior members of the post office with him. And I think they're going to see how much they have broken a Postal Service that until a few years ago really worked.
Are you ultimately hoping for a hearing on Capitol Hill that some of these leaders of the Postal Service sit before this committee?
We invited the Postal Service to participate in the roundtable, the town hall that I had in South Dakota 2 weeks ago that Pete Sessions participated in. I wish they could have sat there and listened to a guy in very rural western South Dakota who talked about going into liver failure because he kept waiting for his medication to show up and it never did. I wish they could talk to the guy from Sokup Construction that faced a $2,700 late charge because he mailed it 2 weeks before the bill was due and it never showed up. I wish they could have heard those stories from real South Dakotans because when we talk to them, they are not focused enough on fixing these problems.
Well, it sounds like now they're up against some real action. Senator Mike Rounds telling me that the Inspector General, the Postal Service's Inspector General, has agreed to look into the mail service around here. Yeah,
that is one thing I didn't realize when I went to Congress, is how much members of Congress work at crossways with one another. You know, it's about the glory, or it's about trying to cut off that other guy at the pass. One great blessing that I have, is that I get to work with John Thune and Mike Rounds, two guys who love their country, who try to solve problems behind the scenes rather than going up and having their hair on fire. We all know how to turn up the volume when we have to, but we know that all too often blowing people up in public makes things worse. And so we look at the whole array of tools and we work together to get things done. And Mike has been a good leader on this. We're working in tandem to try to fix this problem.
All right, hardest question of the interview, Congressman. What have we not gotten to that you want to talk about?
Only, the one thing about working in D.C. is I'm never bored. It's 10 different dumpster fires every single day. You and I don't have time to talk about all of them.
Well, what about the stock show? I know you are going down to the stock show. What's on Congressman Johnson's plan for the stock show?
Well, I'm just going to stand around and have people come talk to me. That's what I do both weekends, most years. That's what I'll be doing this year as well. What I've noticed in the last 6 months, Blake, is while I'm there and I'm ready to talk about federal issues, I'm ready to talk about Minneapolis, I'm ready to talk about tariffs, I'm ready to talk about the beef marketplace, the Packers, right? Increasingly, people want to talk about the governor's race.
Right.
And listen, I won't dodge any question. I'll answer anything they've got. And I've figured out the people, number one, they love the state. Number two, they know it's still a great state. But number three, they're a little concerned that they don't see the plan or the strategy or the vision. They don't think we've had a statewide conversation about how are we going to have better opportunities for our kids 10 years from today than we have now. I mean, a majority of our school kids can't read at grade level. I'm not hearing a conversation about that. Our economy in this state is shrinking at a time when the economies in most of the rest of the country are growing. I'm not hearing a conversation about that. Neither are South Dakotans. I suspect that's what I'm going to hear this weekend. And
how do you think you guys as candidates should try to, I guess, get that message out? Do you think there is some sort of shortcoming there with that messaging?
Well, one of the reasons that every couple of weeks I've rolled out new policy proposals, and I want to thank your station for covering them, because that's what campaigns should be about. They shouldn't just be about negative campaigning, right? They should be about what is your vision for the future. And so when I've talked about, my plan to reduce property taxes for literally every single South Dakota homeowner, when I've talked about my plan to give a property tax holiday for first-time home buyers for 2 years, when I've talked about my plan to better integrate skilled trades into our graduation requirements, so we actually put our money where our mouth is on the skilled trades. When I've rolled out my plan for how to increase science and reading in this state, I've done that. I've really done that because I think South Dakotans deserve a bold vision. And when I heard the State of the State address a couple of weeks ago, I just didn't see anything that was as bold as any of those things that I've mentioned to you.
Okay, well, Congressman, we do appreciate you coming on, and if I may, I'll just finish by saying that's why we hope people watch this show.
Yes.
We try to cover these things in depth. We make headlines out of the bigger parts of the interviews, the more newsworthy parts. But if you watch each episode, we usually get pretty deep into policy, or at least we try to.
And that makes for a more informed voter, and I think that makes for a better office holder.
Congressman, again, appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
All right, and that will do it for your Political Pulse.